Hello, class, and welcome back to our continued exploration of the psychology of language. Next, I want to explore the fascinating topic of how the brain processes and controls language, and why some individuals struggle to learn language while others seem to acquire it effortlessly. So, language is a uniquely human ability that allows us to communicate with each other, to convey our ideas and express our thoughts and feelings. And anyone who has tried to master a second language as an adult knows the difficulty of learning language. And yet children learn languages easily and naturally. And this is because the ability to acquire language is hardwired into the human brain, and our brains are most receptive to language during early childhood. Children who are not exposed to language early in their lives will likely never learn one. Case studies including Victor, the wild child, who was abandoned as a baby in France and not discovered until he was 12 years old. And Jeannie, who we've already talked about, a child whose parents locked her in a closet from 18 months until 13 years of age, are fortunately two of the only known examples of these deprived children. Both of these children made some progress in socialization after they were rescued, but neither of them developed full functional language. And this is also why it is important to determine quickly if a child is deaf and to begin immediately to communicate in sign language. Deaf children who are not exposed to sign language during their early years will likely never learn it. So, how does the brain process and control language? For the 90% of people who are right-handed, language is stored and controlled by the left cerebral cortex. Although for some left-handers, this pattern is reversed. But primarily, if you take your hand and stick it over your left ear, you will identify your language center of your brain. And these differences can be easily seen in the results of neuroimaging studies that show that listening to and producing language creates greater activity in the left hemisphere than in the right hemisphere. There's an area known as Broca's area, an area in front of the left hemisphere near the motor cortex, and that's responsible for language production. And this area was first localized in the 1860s by the French physician Paul Broca, who studied patients with lesions to various parts of their brain. And patients with damage to Broca's area have difficulty producing speech, often using only short, simple sentences with little or no grammatical structure. And they may struggle to find the right words, and their speech may be slow and labored. Wernicke's area, an area of the brain next to the auditory cortex, is responsible for language comprehension. People with damage to Wernicke's area can produce speech, but what they say makes no sense, and they have trouble understanding language. And so this condition is known as Wernicke's aphasia. So evidence for the importance of Broca's and Wernicke's areas in language is seen in patients who experience aphasia, which is a condition in which language functions are severely impaired. People with Broca's aphasia have difficulty producing speech, whereas people with damage to Wernicke's area can produce speech, but what they say makes no sense, and they have trouble understanding language. So language processing in the brain really is a complex process that involves multiple areas and pathways. So, for example, the arcuate fasciculus is a bundle of nerve fibers that connects Broca's and Wernicke's areas and is important for language comprehension and production. And so damage to this very unique pathway can result in conduction aphasia, a condition in which individuals have difficulty repeating words and sentences. In addition to the left hemisphere, the right hemisphere also plays a role in language processing, particularly in the processing of things like intonations, emphasis, and the emotional content. And this is why people with right hemisphere damage have a difficulty understanding and conveying emotions. Now, language, we need to kind of remember, is a complex and remarkable ability that human beings possess, and allowing us to communicate and express all our thoughts and emotions and desires. But there are some theories of language acquisition that have been proposed by psychologists, and they differ in terms of the importance they place on this whole nature-nurture debate. Now, when we speak of nature, we're referring to the idea that language acquisition is genetically programmed, and nurture refers to the idea that it is learned through experience. And it's clear that both nature and nurture play a role in language acquisition. While children are not born knowing language, they are born with brains that are pre-wired in a way that leads them almost effortlessly to learn language. And this suggests that there is a biological basis for language acquisition. Perhaps the most straightforward explanation of language development is that it occurs through principles of learning, including association, reinforcement, and the observation of others. The idea is supported by the fact that children learn the language that they hear spoken around them rather than some other language. Additionally, children modify their language through imitation, reinforcement, and shaping, as would be predicted by learning theories. However, language cannot be entirely learned through experience. For instance, children learn words too fast for them to be learned through simple reinforcement. Furthermore, language is more generative than it is imitative. And here, generativity refers to the fact that speakers of a language can compose sentences to represent new ideas that they have never before been exposed to. So language is not a predefined set of ideas and sentences that we choose when we need them, but rather a system of rules and procedures that allows us to create an infinite number of statements or thoughts and ideas, including those that have never previously occurred. And this suggests that there is something innate about language acquisition, something that goes beyond the principles of simple learning. And one of the most famous proponents of the nature approach to language acquisition is the linguist Noam Chomsky. Now, according to Chomsky, human brains contain a language acquisition device that includes a universal grammar that underlies all human language. Chomsky's account proposes that children are born with a knowledge of general rules of syntax that determine how sentences are constructed. Now, Chomsky differentiates between the deep structure of an idea, how the idea is represented in the fundamental universal grammar that is common to all languages, and the surface structure of the idea, which is how it is expressed in any one language. Once we hear or express a thought in surface structure, we generally forget exactly how it happened. Now, although there is general agreement among psychologists that babies are genetically programmed to learn language, there is still debate about Noam Chomsky's idea that there's a universal grammar that can account for all language learning. And some researchers have argued that language acquisition is more influenced by cultural factors, that there may be no universal grammar that underlies all languages, although some AI research seems to suggest that this indeed is the case, as, for example, some language modeling where where the AI is trained in, for example, English, and then given just a few simple words, say, for example, in Swahili, is then able to very quickly translate Swahili. Now, another example is some research done in 2009 that surveyed the world's languages and found that none of the presumed underlying features of the language acquisition device were entirely universal. So, again, there's some tension there. Now, in their search, and this is Evans and Levinson, they found languages that did not have noun or verb phrases, that did not have tenses, that is past, present, or future, and even some that did not have nouns or verbs at all, even though a basic assumption of universal grammar is that all languages share some of these features. So there's some challenge there, some tension in the evidence that goes on. But despite all of these debates, it's clear that language acquisition is something that's a complex process that involves both nature and nurture. It's obvious that children learn language by hearing what happens around them, but they do also obviously have an innate ability to acquire language that goes far beyond the principle of basic learning and reinforcement. So let's go on now and just explore a little bit about a topic that I find very interesting, and that is bilingualism and its impact on cognitive development. Now, bilingualism, which refers to the ability to speak two languages, is becoming more and more frequent in our modern world. Nearly half of the world's population, including about almost 20% of citizens in North America, grow up bilingual. However, in recent years, many of the United States have passed laws outlawing bilingual education in schools. And these laws are based on the idea that speaking two languages may interfere with cognitive development, but that's opposite to actual evidence. Because some early psychological research showed that, and this is the argument that they use, is some early evidence showed that compared to monolingual children, bilingual children performed more slowly when processing language, and the verbal scores were lower. But that was just a very quick, limited research. These tests were frequently given in English, even when that was not a child's first language, and the children tested were often of lower socioeconomic status than the monolingual children. So there's a lot of factors that went into biasing that kind of research. More current research that is controlled for these factors has found that although bilingual children may in some cases learn language somewhat slower than do monolingual children, bilingual and monolingual children do not significantly differ in the final depth of language learning, nor do they generally confuse the two languages. In fact, participants who speak two languages have been found to have better cognitive functioning, better cognitive flexibility, and analytical skills in comparison to their monolingual comparatives. And research has also found that learning a second language produces changes in the area of the brain in the left hemisphere that are involved with language, such that this area becomes denser and contains more neurons. Furthermore, the increased density is stronger in those individuals who are most proficient in their second language and who learn the second language earlier. So, rather than slowing language development, learning a second language seems to increase cognitive abilities. Bilingual individuals have been found to have better cognitive control, better attention, better working memory compared to the monolinguals. Moreover, bilingualism enhances the ability to monitor the environment and switch attention between different stimuli, leading to improved cognitive flexibility. So overall, bilingualism seems to provide a good mental workout for the brain, as the individual must constantly choose between two languages and suppress one language while using the other. And this cognitive process strengthens the brain and can even delay the onset of age-related cognitive decline and dementia, according to some research. So, in conclusion, bilingualism has been shown to have positive effects on cognitive development. Bilingual individuals have better cognitive functioning, better cognitive flexibility, better analytical skills compared to monolinguals. And rather than discouraging bilingualism, I think we should encourage and celebrate it, as it provides many benefits to people and society as a whole, particularly when bilingualism is learned early in life. So, overall, what have we covered in this course so far? Well, we've looked at the reality that language is an incredibly complex and fascinating aspect of human cognition. From the smallest unit of sound, the phoneme, to the neural pathways involved in language processing, and the impact of bilingualism on cognitive development, there is much to learn and explore in the field of language psychology. Phonemes are the building blocks of language, and the ability to distinguish and manipulate them is a crucial skill in language acquisition. As we develop and refine our phonemic awareness, we become better able to understand and produce sounds of our native languages. The left temporal cortex is a key area of the brain involved in language processing. It's important, as evidenced by the significant language deficits that can come as a result of damage to this area. And the development of language is a complex interplay between biological and environmental factors, and our understanding of this process has been greatly enhanced by advances in neuroimaging technology. And bilingualism has been shown to have a number of cognitive benefits, including improved cognitive flexibility and analytical skills. And research has also found that early childhood bilingualism can lead to changes in brain structure and function, resulting in what some have called better brains. As our understanding of the psychology of language continues to evolve, we can expect to gain even deeper insights into the way in which language shapes our thoughts, behaviors, and interactions with the world around us. From the way we learn language as children to the way bilingualism can enhance cognitive functioning, I think language is a fascinating area of study that has much to offer both researchers and everyday speakers alike. And I hope that you can appreciate how important the understanding of language development can be to those who are working with populations that are struggling in areas of their functioning. And so particularly with people that plan on working in social and community development, this is an important area to be mindful of. I hope you enjoyed our lecture for this week. I'll see you next week. You take care. Bye-bye.